I was texting Jess Archer. Click. Hey everyone, episode sorry. Scratch. Start over. Rewind. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 161. We're getting started a half hour later, which is why I messed up that first take. So give me a little bit of grace there. Episode 161. Thanks so much for joining us, hanging out with us. As always, with me is my wonderful and usually quite well prepared Mr. Dorinda. Mr. Dorinda, how's it going, dude?
I'm good. I'm
Yes.
well prepared. I'm extra prepared this
You are.
week. I thought we would try something a little bit different. We've got visuals for those of you who tune into the video stream on YouTube, whether live or after the fact. We do get a few views, but it's not.
That's good.
It's not big ticket, but we do struggle sometimes explaining code. So I thought,
indeed,
I was at my computer and preparing for the podcast, and I thought maybe if I get this set up so that we can stream, it doesn't provide much benefit for our audio listeners, but for those of you who do tune in or want to check in after the fact what we're talking about, we've got the podcast up on the Laravel News YouTube account, so you can go and check that out there. And we'll try and get the chapter markers in line with the podcast as well, so that should help things line up a little bit.
And you've got all the notes and everything all set for us today. This is great. This is good stuff.
I'm ready.
Hey,
you woke up 30 minutes late and everything's just ready to go.
Well, I didn't quite wake up 30 minutes. I stayed awake. You know what I've been playing? And I hate to do this because, I see the comments of people saying, like, if you would just skip the chat and just get right to the stuff, that'd be better. I've been playing Rocket League Sideswipe on the phone, and I'm waiting for you to join me in that journey, but you're not there. I put a thing in our chat today, and like crickets. Nobody said anything.
No one's interested in your. We're all too busy customizing our Vim themes and buying ultra-wide monitors.
That's right. That's true. I've already got my ultra-wide monitor, and I've got PHP Storm, so I don't need to install and futz around with Vim for days to get it to work. Anyway. Hey, real quick before I forget, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Honey Badger, who has an amazing new product called Hook Relay, which you may or may have not heard about. It helps you to put webhooks into your application and all of the complexity that goes along with that you don't think about until you actually get started working on it yourself. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the show, but thanks Honey Badger for sponsoring the show. Well, why don't we get right into it, Michael? We've got releases at the very top of the show. We've got Laravel 9 is now released. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Laravel 9?
Absolutely. Laravel 9, as you said, has been released. It includes many new features, including a bump to PHP version 8 as a minimum now. It supports controller route groups, a refreshed default ignition error page, a Laravel Skate database engine, Scout, Symfony mailer integration replacing the old Swift mailer using Fly System v3 all the way out from v1, improved eloquent accesses and mutators, and many more. The downside to putting the website up for everyone who's watching the video stream is that they know now that we're just reading what's on the articles as we go along. Every now and then we ad lib. Yes. I did notice in passing, so Laravel 9 that was released as part of the annual release cycle now, in line with Symfony's versioning, was released a little bit later. I did notice here, this hasn't been updated, but Laravel 9 is not actually an LTS release at the time of this recording. That has been removed, and it's due to a little bit of back and forth within the Symfony team actually trying to decide whether or not they want to bump the minimum PHP version from version 8 to version 8.1, because they're running into some issues there. Taylor was tweeting about this during the week. Some people noticed in the documentation that it was kind of quietly removed the day of or the day after the release of Laravel 9. We've spoken about it on this podcast before that LTS is typically just a way to sort of delay the pain of upgrading your applications, and you get 3 years or 2 years worth of update pain all in one hit. There's no real value, I think, in the term of software development in staying on an old release. I know that we're using Laravel 6 at work for LTS reasons, and we're just so far behind in terms of all of the modern features. You've got packages that then, you've got all of this upgrade stuff that you need to do in one big hit. It's not just upgrading from Laravel 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. It's all of the
Sure. Yep.
ancillary work along the way that you kind of delay by doing that. And so, you lose out on the new PHP version features, the new framework features and things like that. But, in addition to that, Taylor was kind of saying on Twitter that unless you control end-to-end all of your dependencies, you don't really have a complete SEMVer compliance. You don't really have long-term support unless you end up forking and then maintaining all of those packages, after people kind of drop off and things like that. Now, Laravel typically is using well-maintained packages. We've seen with things like the trusted proxies, middleware, and things like that, and even Faker PHP, the library that was kind of let go by the original maintainer, that Laravel has picked that up. And so they do that a lot, but it's, just ever increasing in the size and scope of the work. So things to keep in mind. But the main thing there is that Laravel 9 at the time of this recording is not LTS. It may be revisited, but I get the feeling that we're not going to see another Laravel LTS release at least for the short to medium term. But there's a whole heap of new features. As I said, PHP 8 is the new minimum version. We've got a newly designed route list. We've got a new coverage option when you're running artisan tests. Anonymous stub migrations, which were introduced, I think, in Laravel 8.35 or thereabouts, are now the default. So anytime you create a new migration, the stub that will be generated, rather than generating a class name and having, class create post table extends Cedar, you're now just going to get a return new class return new class migration, extends migration. And that's just to sort of avoid naming collisions in your migration. So if you have a create post table and you pull in a package that also has a create post table, you get naming collisions and things like that due to the way that it does the auto loading of those classes. There's a new query builder interface. So if you're wanting to use type hints in your application when you're returning query builder interfaces from different Eloquent calls, that's now consistent between the query builder and the Eloquent query builder.
Which was always a pain. Yeah, that was always a tough one.
Always tough because they always had slight differences. So all of that kind of stuff has been extracted into a common interface between the two builders. And now we've got traits to sort of decorate that each of them and bring in that functionality. So it's consistent between the two. Deferring, one to the other, Eloquent to the builder and such as is needed. So we're using PHP 8 string functions. So using PHP 8 as a base not only gives us a more modern PHP base to work with, but also all of the features. We can now just assume that they're going to be there in most scenarios. There are some PHP 8.1 specific things in there, for example, the implicit route bindings using enums. But all of this is handled within the context of the framework. So if you don't have PHP 8.1, A, those things won't work. B, the framework won't break because they're sort of feature flagged in there. So it'll be good if we can get, some clarity from Symfony on how they're going to approach this. I mean, if I was Laravel, it would probably make sense just to set PHP 8.1 as the minimum. But not everyone using the framework is quite there yet. There are still some packages in the ecosystem and dependencies and things like that aren't quite PHP 8.1 ready. There's deprecations and things like that not all open source maintainers have time to get through. So that kind of stuff kind of jumps in the way a little bit with PHP 8.1, but we'll see what happens with Symfony, I suppose. And some other features that we've spoken about on previous episodes in terms of route group, controller route groups, Eloquent attribute casting, forced scope binding. So if you've got like a users /user ID /post ID, that subsequent lookup will be kind of scoped to the user automatically for you and things like that. We've got a new Laravel Breeze API and Next.js starter or boilerplates. Taylor took a swing at bringing the Scout database, Laravel Scout, which is a full text search package.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
From Laravel. So they've brought out a full text search driver that you can use with MySQL. Yep. So full text indexes and where clauses in, and for Postgres as well. So we've got support for full text indexes and where clauses using that through Eloquent, rendering inline blade templates, supporting the sockety Echo server, optional Bootstrap 5 pagination views, improved ignition exception page, which we spoke about last episode, and new string and to route helpers. And along with all of that, we also had a brand new website design for Laravel. We can check that out, I suppose, seeing as we're
Which you are
live.
featured on, Michael, right up at the very top.
Yeah,
I'm seeing you top
someone
middle.
put me on there for reasons unbeknown to me. The best in class testing tools, which is true. I love that. Laravel has always been on the forefront of kind of testing, and now that we've got working for Laravel and we've got PES PHP, we're just seeing all kinds of adoption, not only within Laravel but broadly across the PHP ecosystem. It just makes it, it's a wrapper on top of PHP Unit, and that's not to take anything away from the work that Sebastian has done for years and years and years with PHP Unit, but it's just a cleaner, simpler sort of interface over that, and it kind of leans into Laravel's expressiveness and simplicity, and really just human readability of English readability of method calls and things like that. So that's a big piece there, but there's a whole lot of stuff. As I said, we've spoken about upcoming features for quite a while. Taylor went into all of the new features. Jeffrey Way has put out a new Laracast video free on YouTube and on laracast.com in terms of all of the new features. Mohammed put out a quick 10-minute run through of everything as well on the Laravel YouTube channel. So there's plenty of resources out there, whether written or video form, on what is in Laravel 9. But the main thing is that it's here now, and it's ready to go. I think we had only 2 patch releases on release day, and we're now into the regular weekly release cycle. So we're at Laravel 9.1 now. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. As I said, key is it's PHP 8 minimum, and it is not at the time of this recording, and probably won't be from what I can see, from what I've seen online. In terms of LTS support, I think that's just a thing of the past now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we actually are still pushing to get all our stuff onto 8. We've got the vast majority of our stuff onto PHP 8, but once we get everything over to PHP 8, then we'll be pushing for Laravel 9, and then after we get Laravel 9 on, then we'll be going to 8.1. So that's sort of our progression. But we typically wait a couple weeks after a major release to push it anyway, just to make sure all of the packages and stuff are updated. And Jason McCreary does a great job actually of helping along with that. He'll submit PRs to packages, all the major packages, to make sure that they're all up to date with the ability to be able to use the newest version of Laravel, making sure that that's all set for the community to be able to migrate as quickly as possible. So yeah, excited for that. Okay, next up we've got Laravel Nova 4, a teaser. So a really big upgrade of Laravel Nova is around the corner. And Taylor talked about a couple of these things, a little sneak peek when we were at Laracon online a couple of weeks ago. I guess was it last week? 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago now, I think.
So it's been a while since they've gotten a major upgrade, since Nova's gotten a major upgrade. So here is what we know so far. So there is this new depends on method. And so this new method will allow us to explain the software that one field depends on another. So you might have a drop down in a resource where you have a category and a subcategory field. And so you can imagine if you had, you're creating a ticketing system. Let's just be really generic about this, right? Or I don't know. Yeah, a ticketing system. That's what we're working on at my place of employment right now. So let's say you have a hardware issue. So you'd select a category of hardware, and then these subcategories would, of course, depend on the primary category that you would choose. So the subcategories might be, I have a phone that I'm dealing with, or I have a PC that, or like a desktop device where you have a category, monitor, and a keyboard, or a mouse, right? Those subcategories, so you can imagine if you had switch out as you chose those. So previously, that would be something you'd have to code custom inside of Nova. But now you can simply say that a category depends on right now. So another category, and it can automatically show or hide information based on that dependency. So you can pick category A and only see subcategories that depend on category A. So the state of Nova forms can be changed with this new method. And that's pretty awesome. We've got also, this is a really cool one. I love this. It used to be that you had to create custom filterable fields if you wanted to say, I wanted to be able to filter on a particular field inside a table. But now, instead of creating custom filters or even packages to achieve this sort of outcome, you can now filter fields by adding one single line of code. So let's say you have posts and each blog post may have a different user attached. By adding one single line of code, I think it's filterable. So you just say user filterable. You'll be able to directly filter this field over in that top right corner where you click filter. It'll automatically appear there now. So filterable fields seem to be available for text and date fields and possibly more in the future. Okay, we've also got some really big user interface improvements. So I know that there was a dark mode that was introduced. There's some more space between some of the elements. It's a fully responsive theme now, so you can manage it on your phone. And this is a big one that David had talked about. He's like, oh, responsive. It's such a pain in the neck, right? But and I know a ton of work went into that, but it looks really, really great. I was able to get a little sneak peek. Michael and I actually, Michael, I think you may have even got a chance to install it and play around with it with a couple things. So
yeah, I have every now and then.
It's quite nice.
I will log into the thing with the Nova dashboard and from my phone just to check up on some metrics and things like that. And it takes a second for it to tweak. I'm like, oh, this is actually responsive and it works nicely. So it's it's good to see that. I mean, it's no big deal. I could pinch and zoom and flip around, but it's just I know that the amount of work that went into that, on top of sort of the underlying technology changes and things like that in V4 is it's a lot of stuff that kind of adds up. So kudos to the team there, David Hemphill and crew.
Yep. So we've got that's just a couple of the items that were mentioned. So there was also new field types, different notifications, batch to action support, a whole bunch of other stuff. Later next month, we can expect an official unveil. So the big question that's remaining is how many breaking changes will there be? Hopefully not a ton, honestly. They usually do a pretty great job of making those transitions seamless. And I think even when you were deploying that one, it was an upgrade from a previous version to a more current version. So it went really, really well.
Yeah. There are a couple of minor things. They've shuffled around how the dashboards work and things like that, but it was not a huge amount of work. And even, in the absence of documentation, because it's still a beta release, we're still able to kind of feel the way through it and get it done. So it's not a huge amount of work. So it'll be good to see that get out. I know it's been a while since V3 came out, so.
Yep. And so, of course, since this is a new major release as well, this will be a different license as well. So you'll need to, this will be a purchased upgrade, which seems very fair. Tons of work has gone into this. So really excited to get on that new version in all our production apps.
Absolutely.
Okay. On to Laracon, my friend.
Yes, Laracon Online has, I suppose, been and gone. Obviously, the article was ahead of that. From the 9th of February. But this was the very first time that we were streaming Laracon for free and live on YouTube. I think it was like at 12 hours. Like it was a full-on day. There was full-length talks. There was lightning talks. There was a lot of stuff going on there. Started from about 9 o'clock in the morning, I think Eastern, and ran through until, into the evening there as well. So you can check out the full schedule. You can view the whole stream. The whole stream is already live. On the Laravel, on the Laracon YouTube channel, which we'll have links to in the show notes for everybody. I caught glimpses of different talks at different points throughout the day. I still haven't really had a chance to sit down. I've sort of been falling into the YouTube well lately. Every time I open YouTube, there's something interesting there, and I kind of just click next until eventually it's time for sleep. So I have to make a concerted effort to sit down and watch the stream. But as I said, the videos are up. By all accounts, there were some fantastic talks. I saw loads of positive feedback for a lot of different talks through the day, which is good to see and hear, especially given how many first time and new speakers that we had speaking and some returning speakers as well. So check that out. I think closed captioning is still underway. I think they were still working their way through that. Obviously, for nearly 12 hours worth of streaming, there's a bit to get into. So definitely check that out. Outside of the event, there was also the swag store. There was many of the sponsors have also put out discounts and things like that, free stuff that you can check out. I got a $40 DoorDash voucher from Linode. Fortunately, I managed to claim that before the announcement came out that Akamai was purchasing Linode, so who knows what's going to happen in that regard. But
Nice.
my Laracon poster came in the mail the other day, so it's going to go up on the wall back there at some point. I need to go and get a frame for it. I still haven't put up the one from
Last
previous
year,
Laracon,
or
from
yeah,
last Laracon though. So I've got a hat and some t-shirts coming. I've got the yellow one because don't
summer,
have
I
any
guess.
yellow
Yeah.
stuff. So definitely
Right.
check all that out. Check out the swag store if you want to support. Obviously a free event is free for us as viewers, but if there's any way you can contribute towards that outside of the fantastic sponsors that we had, definitely check that out. And all of the videos from the previous years are also live on the YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't seen them previously, you can definitely check them out and see how you go.
Yep, I really enjoyed a lot of those talks. Have some notes to go back and rewatch some of those items. I thought Luke Downing did a really, really great job. Let me see, who else did I think was Aaron Francis was hilarious. He was really, really jazzed about Sidecar and talking about that. He had some really interesting stuff. One of the items that I thought was awesome was that Browser Shot is now available to run as a Sidecar plugin, I suppose you could say.
Very nice.
So previously you'd have to install Puppeteer and all that stuff on your server that you were going to be running Browser Shot on, and now you can just install Sidecar, get your AWS creds set up, and then deploy it with this Browser Shot thing and just push all that straight up to a Lambda instead of having to manage it on your web server, which was really cool. Marcel gave a quick talk about Web 3.0, and that was actually really helpful. It was really, really good. Of course, Taylor's was awesome. API integrations, Steve, he had a bit of a panic moment. There was a little bit of a technical glitch, but he worked his way through that, so that was good. And I was actually he put out a repo as well that has some really cool stuff that I've been looking through. Caleb, of course, is incredible. Always, he's so freaking hilarious. He just makes me laugh every time he has a talk. He's like a comedian.
Yeah, he does. He's so deadpan about it as well. Like even if he stumbles over something,
I think that's
he
what's
just
so
keeps
funny.
on going, and he's like,
Yes,
just breezes past it, which is the good thing. He's I know that when he first presented at Laracon, I think it was New York back in 2017, and he was super, super nervous. But I think, despite any nerves, like you wouldn't know, outside of the fact that he said he had nerves, he's a terrific speaker, and he's gone past that now, and it's always a pleasure to see the stuff that he's going, and he's always got the enthusiasm for it, which just sells it even more.
Absolutely. Yeah, he did a great job. So that was really, really fun. Okay, folks, that takes us past news and into packages. So speaking of Jason McCreary, he has sort of labeled himself. I don't know if you've picked this up. He's sort of labeled himself as like Laravel's garbage man. So he just picks up the trash, and shifts everybody's stuff. And now he has got another little garbage collection thing here to clean up stale or old local branches that have been merged and deleted on GitHub. So this happens to me all the time, right? I have a Git branch that's just been sitting on my machine, and the older my machine gets, I've got a relatively new one right now, but sometimes when I do like Git branch and just look at how many branches I have on my machine, it's like, oh my gosh, those things have been here for like a year, right? And so you just got tons of them. So Jason has released a CLI tool for organizing local and remote branches. So he says in his tweet, cleaning up thousands of dangling references and Git repos everywhere. Another garbage man production. So the command is called git-trim. It's a quick way to remove merged, pruned, untracked, and stale branches in Git repositories. So all you have to do is call git-trim. That will remove local branches where its remote branch no longer exists. You can also do -- merged or -- stale or -- untracked or -- all, and you can also combine these. So you could say -- merged and -- stale. You can download it to try this command via npm or as a omyzsh plugin. And so of course you can see the source code as well at github.com/jasonmccreary/git-trim. I am definitely installing this one. I need to have it run as like a what do they call that thing where it's like automatically launches. It's not like I'm wanting to say like a daemon or demon, whatever, but I can't remember what Mac's equivalent of that is. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but have this like run across all of my different Git repos on my machine every night or something and just clean it all up. That'd be awesome.
Tidy.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Hit it. Oh no, I missed calculating mathematical statistics in PHP. The Laravel or the math nerd in me is crying about this. Go ahead, Michael.
That's okay.
Take it away.
You can take it if you'd like.
No, it's okay. I haven't even
No,
looked at it yet. So
I saw this one pop up on the Laravel News Telegram channel, which we can have a link to in the show notes for those of you who don't.
that's really handy.
It just pops out
Yeah.
everything new, and so you get a quick look anytime there's a new article published by the team. But Hi Folks /statistics is a PHP package that provides functions for calculating mathematical statistics of numeric data. The package includes functions that can calculate things like mean, median, quartile calculations, and specialized calculations like geometric mean. It's all through a facade or a front a static class. So you can say stat : mean and pass an array of integer values or float values. You can use geometric mean, medians, first quartiles, third quartiles, frequencies and things like that. I've been for the longest time wanting to do some work around talking about standard deviations and things like that in terms of like tracking the performance of your scheduled tasks over a period of time. So you could say, week to week, your average runtime has increased based on some standard deviation, so that you could give a good indication that maybe something is going wrong with those tasks. But I dreaded doing the maths on it because it's been a while since I've done any of that kind of stuff. So having a package that's just going to do it for me, and I can just shove it an array of or a collection of values and have it just calculate the difference between the two would make life much easier. So as I said, there's various functions provided in the package. The README has good documentation and examples for using all of them. You can learn more about the package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code. I've definitely got this one bookmarked because I'm going to get around to using it eventually. As I said, it'll be good to provide some more insights because that was part of what Them Ping Me was supposed to be all about, not just monitoring when things go wrong, but also providing insights into when things are going wrong. They're heading in a bad way. You could have a task that normally takes 30 seconds to run and suddenly it's finishing after 2 seconds. And you go, well, that's probably something going wrong there. If there's a sudden crash in that sort of range. So I'm definitely going to look at this one in the very near future.
I had to write my own quartile calculations, and that was not fun. Thankfully, I was able to figure it out. It's not technically actually that difficult, but like having a package like this, that's like mine isn't tested. My quartile calculations are not tested, and being able to have something like this I could just pull in would be really, really helpful, actually.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Laravel Google Chat alerts. So let my page load up here. Here we go. This is a package by Guy Warner and is meant to send a message to Google Chat quickly. This was inspired by by Spassy's Laravel Slack alerts package, and it does the exact same thing for Google Chat. So now you can say Google Chat alert : I need to say : by the way. I was just thinking about that the other day. Google Chat alert : message, and then you just send through a message. That's it. You can send it quickly without the overhead of the Laravel notification system. It just sends alerts as a job to your queue to prevent your app from failing in case Google Chat is down. And just like the Spassy package for Slack, it supports multiple channels and the ability to select which channel you want to send an alert to. Additional features include using Markdown and the ability to mention all users in a particular channel. So check out that package if you use Google Chat. I cannot say that I've really ever used Google Chat much. No. I didn't even know you could have like channels and stuff in Google Chat. Maybe I need to check it back out again.
Maybe. I think we use Google Meet and things like that, but I don't.
Yeah, sure.
It used to be like Hangouts chat and things like that, but I think I don't know. Google goes through these phases of amalgamating things and then splitting them out again. So who knows? But definitely, these kinds of sort of utilitarian notification packages. The Slack one's good. Everyone's using Slack, but you could do the same thing for Discord and whatever else. Even probably putting things into Teams. There's some free ideas for people if they're using those different avenues for that kind of work, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, I just logged into it. It looks interesting. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Interesting. I mean, it's literally like any other chat app you've used, right? I mean, interesting. Okay. Anyway, we don't have to dwell on that one too long. Let's talk about our sponsor, Michael.
Let's do it. If you've ever had to integrate your apps with third parties such as Stripe or GitHub or Slack or Trello, then you would like to have quality webhooks, just like the ones that Stripe uses, for example. And there is more to sending webhooks than just sending a JSON payload to your customer's URL and calling it a day, right? That's where Hook Relay comes in. Hook Relay is a service that makes sending and receiving webhooks reliable, secure, and transparent, and automatically. Users are amazed at the visibility they've gained into their webhooks, and without Hook Relay, you have no idea how many requests you're processing. With Hook Relay, you can watch your traffic, inspect each and every request, and much more. It's like having X-ray vision into your webhooks. And of course, if your app or your integration partners are being flaky, you'll love the peace of mind that comes with knowing that no matter what happens, Hook Relay will make sure that your webhooks are delivered. Skip days of grunt work rolling your own webhook system and get reliable webhooks for your app in minutes and not days. So go to hookrelay.dev to get started and check webhooks off your to-do list. You can get started from just $0 per month. It's free forever. It gives you 100 deliveries per day, 14 days of retention, and 3 hook endpoints. If you've ever had to roll this, especially if you're wanting to do all the tracking of headers and payloads being sent and what you're getting back as responses, it is more effort than it's worth. Just focus on your own apps. Thanks to our friends at Honey Badger and hookrelay.dev for sponsoring the podcast.
Awesome. Hey, we've got another package here that is meant to create and send digest emails in Laravel. So the Laravel digest package is a really simple way to convert your emails into configurable digests. So you can create and send digest emails using various configurable frequency types. So let's do an example. So you could send a digest email to the site administrator for every 100 user registrations. So as soon as you get 100 user registrations, boom, it's going to send that email. Or you could send a daily digest of all errors logged. Or you could send a monthly newsletter for all the posts created. So this package makes it really easy. All you have to do is define an observer. So for example, when a new user gets created, you define that observer, and then that will add a record to that digest. So it will take that value, throw it in there, so you don't have to later look it up and say, hey, give me however many users were created between this timestamp and this timestamp. You just define that observer, it throws it onto the digest, and then whenever it's ready to send it out, it will go ahead and take care of everything else from that point on, sending emails once that frequency is met. So it could be that 100 users, it could be a particular date or timestamp. So it looks pretty interesting. And actually, I have a couple spots where we're doing this where it is ripe for a change because it gets annoying to manage this stuff.
Yeah.
The Laravel digest package looks actually pretty useful. So you get started with it. You can check out the source code on GitHub, including installation instructions and usage details.
Yeah, just
bookmark.
Like that. Yeah, bookmark. Just like that stats package, I have an almost immediate use for this and definitely no time to implement it. But I would certainly like to get it in place because anytime we're tracking when a user is registered or an application has been commenced or anything like that, it'd be good to provide metrics around that. And going through and storing the specific, like you don't need to go and recalculate the events every time if you can just store a cumulative total and then at the end of 7 days or whatever, I'll send a snapshot of that data and then start looking at the next week. So rather than calculating the number of times that it happened and having to keep track of that and all that kind of stuff, you can just store an incrementing value of like we've 10 of these, 20 of these, 30 of these. Oh, we got to 50 in the last hour. We should probably notify someone, things like that. So definitely something worth looking at. I know exactly where I'm going to be using that. So
very nice. Very nice.
Next up,
we have... Sorry, I got to shout out the author here real quick. Hmones, Hmones.
Nice. Perfect. All right, next up we have yet another. I swear there's at least one package a week. At least one package a week from our friends at Sparsy. This one is automatic route discovery in Laravel. I think Freek showed this one off in his lightning talk at Laracon online, so you can check that out in the presentation there. But Laravel Route Discovery is a package from Sparsy to discover routes in Laravel applications automatically. You can configure where routes can be discoverable, either in a routes file or via configuration. So you could say discover : controllers, arrow in, app_path, http/controllers. Once you define the controller path, the package will generate route URLs based on the controller and method names at that path. For example, if you wanted a news controller, you might define a news controller. And within that, you would have a function index, a function myMethod, and a function myOtherMethod. And the package would handle conventionally how to convert these. So the index method would just be /news. The my method would be /news/my-method, and my other method would be /news/my-other-method. And while the example that I've just given demonstrates GET requests, the package provides conventions for using post, put, and patch requests based on the method name, and also supports nested controllers using namespace to determine the route. Using the package, you can still register routes in the traditional way as outlined in the Laravel documentation. So putting things into routes/web.php, but not all routes need to be discoverable to be routes. The package can also map routes to blade templates, allowing you to map view files to a route dynamically. So if you just had some static views,
that's interesting.
If you just had static views, if you had documentation, things like that, you can do that all for you. So the package is making use of various PHP attributes to customize the routes, HTTP methods, route names, and so on and so forth. So definitely check out the mapping controllers to routes documentation for more details on the PHP attributes that are available. As with all of these things, you can learn more about the package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes. This is an interesting one. I've always been a little bit hesitant towards using attributes. We've got that beautiful, beautiful artisan route list that Nuno put together. But the first place that I always look whenever I'm going into a new application is the routes folder and looking at the web.php and the api.php and things like that. And so it's nice to just be able to see everything all in one place and sort of click through. Like going into the artisan route list, and then you can see a list of all these things, but then you still have to go back to your editor and go and find the files and things like that. So being able to just click through, especially now that we've got, the tuple notation, and we've got the, you can click straight through to the controllers and methods and things like that directly from the routes file. It just makes everything much more discoverable, discoverable from a programmer sitting at a computer trying to find things perspective, as opposed to discoverable from generating the thing. So horses for courses. Depends on how you do. I know it's like Cake or CodeIgniter did a lot of this kind of conventional, route auto generation based on where things are. It's not for me personally, but definitely check it out if that's something that is of interest to you. It's an interesting package, if nothing else.
Yeah, they did bring up that point, which you just said, which is that CodeIgniter and Cake did a lot of this. But the problem they said, which is that they didn't give an escape hatch. There was not a great way out of this. So the nice thing about this is this does not apply generally over everything. It does not override your ability to register routes manually. I believe also if you do the route list command, it will still spit these out because it is finding them. It's discovering them, and it'll show them there. The other thing that you said, which I agree with, is that like looking at web.php is a great outside-in approach. I can go from the outside and find my way into the internals and discover where it's going. But sometimes if I'm on a controller and I need to see like what is this being called? What is the name of that? Or how did I name that? Right now, typically, if you're following some sort of convention, hopefully that should be relatively obvious to you. You should be able to at least make a guess in the general neighborhood of what it would be named. But there is no way to go from the inside to the out, right? With this, you can. It's right there. And your controller method, you can see it. It's right above your controller method that you know what it's going to be named, what it's going to be called, all the stuff. You can even apply middlewares and all that right inside here, which is really cool. So like you said, like for me, maybe. I don't know. I would still need to be convinced a little bit more, but I was listening to a podcast today. No Compromises. My buddy Joel and what's his name?
Aaron.
Joel and Aaron run that podcast. And he was just talking about the importance of being willing to change your mind. Like when you hear a new idea, not rejecting it immediately, but trying to step back for a minute and say like, okay, let me look at this from the perspective of the person who built it. So like, I know that Spassy and Frake in particular were huge proponents of the tuple notation stuff. So it's not that they're not using that. They definitely are. It's just that they found that maybe this was more interesting in a couple other places. So yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, interesting. I doubt I'll switch over immediately, but maybe at some point in the future, I'll change my mind on that. Okay. Tutorial time. Last time we were together, we talked about an article that Chris Fidao had written where he had accidentally sent a bunch of emails to people from his staging environment. Oops, on accident, right? And so his suggestion at that point was to set up that table in staging with a database, was it engine or language type of black hole? Yeah, black hole, which basically says, I'll accept whatever you're sending to me, but then I'll throw it into a big black hole and nothing's ever going to come out of there. Like it doesn't exist. it'll act the same, but it's like a fake practically, right? So Chris basically, I think, was probably contacted by somebody that said, hey, by the way, this is a much easier way to do what you're trying to, right? So there's an as of yet undocumented way in Laravel to prevent Laravel from sending emails to any old address. Why is this useful? Well, some of us aren't perfect. As mentioned, we accidentally sent thousands of emails to customers from staging environments. So lots of ways to avoid this. Here's the Laravel nice, easy method out of the box. If in your app service provider, in the boot method, you can say if the app environment is not in production, you just use your mail facade and then say always to, and then specify an email that you always want to send mail to. So foo@example.org or whatever you might want to throw in there. And what that will do is if your app that is in staging happens to send mail, it will always send it to foo@example.org or whatever you might want. So what's happening with the always_to? The handy always_to method will override all addresses in the to, CC, and BCC fields with an email message. Or I'm guessing not email message. I think he probably meant email address. This is done with the Illuminate Mail Mailer class, and they have the code commented down below. I say he actually heard this from somebody, but maybe not. Maybe he was just source diving and found this.
I think it was Taylor, actually.
Was it Taylor told him?
Yeah, he's like, I think you can do this. And it's one of those moments. Like all of these things that you that are just in the framework waiting to be discovered one day.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I just found one the other week with like facades make partial mock. So you can make a partial mock out of a facade. Just awesome.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I love the testing stuff that's in facades, because the argument against facades has always been that they're like global service locators that you shouldn't use, and that they make things harder to test. But really, they actually make things easier to test and test more comprehensively.
They really do.
In terms of your feature tests and things like that. You can unit test the underlying class that the facade wraps around, but in terms of just swapping things out, I did a video recently talking about simulating the environment in your test, because we were trying to put some guards in place in some areas of our application where if you're in production, that certain things should or shouldn't be present. And so doing that at the configuration level within your test just leads to all kinds of issues. But creating a facade that sort of wraps around that check, that way you can in your test say, my facade : should receive in production arrow and return false, so that you can then make assertions against your blade views and things like that. It just makes it so much easier to comprehensively test those sorts of things, and just helps you sleep better at night, really.
Indeed. Yeah, I love using facades in my tests and just calling it and like swapping it out and done. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's beautiful. In fact, some of the stuff I make, I'll make like a service class that I'll have bound in the container, and then I'll just make a facade to reference it just for the heck of it. I could swap it out of the container at the test if I want to, but I can also just reference the facade and fake it. So pretty nice.
Convenience,
indeed. Okay, I think you are up. Envy. Oh, this is really cool. Talked to Luke about this last week.
Yeah,
Luke Downing.
Luke Downing put this one together. Keep your environment files updated with Envy by Worksome. Now, we've all been there. You're getting a new developer up and running, or in my scenario, I was the new developer getting up and running, and for some reason it was not 500 errors, but it was certainly mistakes and things missing in terms of configuration. It works on your machine. So what's going on? You've checked all of the usual suspects, the database exists, migrations have been run, and hours pass, and confusion mounts and muttering ensues. And then suddenly you realize that there is a missing entry in your env file. And more often than not, we forget to add things to our example env file. We don't keep it up to date. It's no longer has any, and because it's not kept up to date, there's no meaningful impact on our development cycle. Like we add the thing as we're building it out, we put it in the env file, we forget to put it in the env.example, but our environment doesn't change. Like we don't typically, completely blow away and start from scratch. And I think that's the key to a lot of testing environments, is that you don't often find these things until you're trying to get a new developer on board. And they're doing everything from scratch, and they're trying to follow the documentation and see what's missing. So it's something that I've, as I said, just starting a new job in January, just gone through myself. But so It's only when this happens that you swear you're going to update it, and then you do, and maybe you don't. And even if you do, it's likely it's going to happen again. So at Luke's company, Worksome, they got tired of this endless cycle of pain and decided to do something about it and created Envy, which is a Laravel package that will make sure you never miss an environment variable again. It's not a sync up between your env and env.example file. I know that I think Marcel Possiot or Beyond Code, they have a package that does this kind of check to make sure that your env and env.example files are kind of in sync. But that has a lot of pitfalls. For example, you almost never want to actually copy the environment values from your env file because they tend to contain sensitive information that shouldn't be in version control. And on top of that, if you no longer need an environment variable in your project because you delete a config file or you remove a package, a simple sync between the two won't help remove those outdated variables. So Envy is smarter than this. It reads all of your project's config files or any other files that you've configured and finds calls to the env function. And then it compares those calls to what's inside your env example file. And with that knowledge, it is then able to suggest additions or removals for you so that syncing your environment file with your project is only ever an artisan command away. And on that note, Envy has two artisan commands. There's the env::sync and the env::prune commands, where sync is designed to insert missing environment variables in your example file. Prune is designed to remove environment variables that are no longer required. Neither of these commands will make changes without confirmation unless you pass the force option. So in order to not have to remember to do this every time, or regularly, you can forget to do it. Just chuck it into your CI. So whether you're using GitHub Actions or pipelines or whatever else, there's a basic GitHub workflow that's included in this article that we will link to in the show notes. But with this in place, tweak to your project requirements, you can make a part of every pull request, every merge, you can run it on a schedule to make sure that it happens once a week.
That's a good idea.
Tons of configuration options. The docs has extensive documentation on all of the options available too. And one thing that Luke wants to point out is the fact that you can add additional environment files to check. So if you have a .env.testing or a .env.dust file, you could add those into the mix to ensure that they remain up to date as well. So
great idea.
check
Yeah.
all this out. This is beautiful. I'm sure that Luke will put something nice together. I love watching his presentations, his talks, his videos, his pest stuff. Everything is good. I think he's a wonderful teacher. So hopefully we'll see something like this. So we'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, and so like one of the things that he puts in here too that is important. So when it's scanning over your files, it's like, of course, it's going to scan over your config directory, but then you can also include vendor directories. So if you have like Laravel permissions that you're using, and you want to make sure that those get scanned over for env variables that you might need as well, you can include that and it will scan over those as well. So if they're vendor files that you didn't publish because you don't need to customize them necessarily, but you want to take a look at them and make sure that they're going into your env, you can include those in the path that you want to scan when it does its checks as well. So yeah, this looks really, really cool. We've like he says at the top of the article, we have all been there. Like this has caused more pain and frustration many times for new developers than it needs to be. Okay. Mr. Chris Vidal is on a roll these days, man. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's got another tutorial here called Using S3 with Laravel. So he brings up some really good points that we use S3 for like everything. We don't ever store anything with the server. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to migrate servers really easily, right? So we need to offload that storage to somewhere else. So AWS S3 provides a place for us to store files off of our servers. Here's some big benefits. You have backup and redundancy. They have that built in, S3 does. Scaling, it saves files off server so that you don't have to worry about running out of disk space. You won't need as much when you're storing files in the cloud. And then it's got a lot of features such as versioning support for files, lifecycle rules for deleting old ones that don't need to be there anymore, so you don't need to go through and delete them manually. You can just say, hey, let this live for this long, and then go ahead and delete them. Or you can actually move them to different tiers of storage, like Glacier or whatever. You have deletion protection, all sorts of good stuff, right? So using S3 now can reduce headaches in the long run. So here's how to set this up. It's really, really easy. Couldn't be easier, honestly. So there's two things or two places to configure things for S3 in the env, but also in filesystem.php. And then lastly, you have your AWS account. So he's going to walk you through how you actually set up your AWS account. You're going to set up a new S3 bucket. You're going to set up a new IAM user, and you're going to set up a new key secret pair. And then you're going to attach a policy to that IAM user, which is going to give it access to that S3 bucket. Sounds complicated. It's really not that bad. After that, you're going to set up your AWS keys in your env. And in your file system.php, you're going to set up a new file system, and the driver is going to be set to S3. It's already there. It's already set up by default in the config to have a driver of S3. So all the options and stuff are already in there. It's beautiful. There's a few options there that we didn't use in the env, for example, the AWS URL, which can be set. This is interesting. So there is this AWS endpoint and then use path style endpoint, true or false. Here's all I'm going to say about that. S3 is great if you're running it in production. Wonderful. Awesome. However, it can be a bit tricky if you're wanting to do something. So there's like this middle ground. In testing, it's super easy because all you have to do is storage fake, right? Storage fake, you're home free. No big deal. Production, storage disk, you're running to S3. No big deal. What about when you're in your local dev environment and you're wanting to test that something's going to work? Well, you have two options. You can either set up a separate disk in S3 that can act as like a staging disk, I suppose, if you want, or you can use this magical tool called Minio. And Minio basically is a local S3 instance running on your machine. It has an S3 compatible API, and it just writes to your local file system in a different location wherever you specify. You just run Minio. You fill in these values like the secret access and key and ID and all that stuff with your Minio creds that it gives you as soon as you start running it on your machine. And bada bing, bada boom, you have a local S3 disk on your machine. This is the other reason why I really like using S3, is I can do it locally, I can do it in testing, I can do it in production, and it all feels the exact same. So it's really, really handy. Okay, he walks through all of that. He talks through how to use it in Laravel, which is if you've ever used storage, a fly system, it's going to be really familiar to you. Pricing is cheap. He talks about all that good stuff. And then at the top of the show, we also talked about Fly System 3 is in Laravel 9 as well, which brings some interesting benefits along with it. And lastly, there is actually this temporary URL thing that Taylor just tweeted about like today. So if you have a storage disk, you can reference a link to a particular file inside your storage using, I think, this temporary URL that's off the end of that. Taylor just fixed an issue with that before, where it would break in testing. If you're using that and you did storage fake, it would break, and he just fixed that. So another reason to be using the storage facade and the storage fake and all that amazingness, and using AWS along with it with S3. So thanks, Chris, for that write-up. If you've not used S3 before with your application, I would highly suggest it. It's really, really handy. And if not S3, your provider of choice, Azure, Google, whoever, right?
Yeah,
they're all great, but good stuff there. Thanks, Chris. Hey, I think that's about all we've got, my friend.
That's all of the things. We are done.
That's all the things. That's all she wrote. That's all he wrote.
That's all they
You wrote it all out. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying you wrote the notes all out. So that's all the notes you wrote. There are other spots.
I wrote nothing.
Yeah,
more.
You did write the notes. And hey, everybody, this is episode 161. I think this has been the most active chat we've had in a long time. We've got Jesse and Jess all hanging out in here. We've got Bhushan Gaikwad. We've got who else was talking about your Andy Hinkle was complimenting you on your biceps earlier in the show. That's just a crazy time. So hey, thanks everybody for coming and hanging out with us. This was episode 161. You can find show notes for this episode at podcast.laravel-news.com/161. Of course, you can find I'm lost. Nope. We already did show notes. So we're talking about rating us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be much appreciated. And you can hang out with us, chat with us on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at Laravel News. And hang out with Jess Archer and Jesse Late. I always say his wrong name. I think it's Leet. Jesse Leet. Like Elite. That's that guy. Go hang out with those people too. They're good peoples. Good peoples. Except for the whole Vim thing. I'm over it. Just be done with the Vim thing already. You guys and your Vim plugins. Oh, my word. Ugh. I
More
know. It's like
things
goes in
coming.
these waves. It goes in the cycles. You know what I mean? It's I thought we had Hemp Hill. He was a PHP stormer for a little while there.
Nah, he's come back.
Stormtrooper.
He's come
I
back to the
know.
good side.
He's back on the dark side. He's spending days configuring Vim again. I swear, all you people are like masochists. It's like sadomasochists, whatever that is, where you just like love the pain of setting these things up. I don't know what it is.
I mean,
don't know.
you make it sound like we're constantly tinkering, but for
okay, but seriously,
95%
you
of
can't
the
tell
time,
me that is not true though, because you spend like 3 days on it in a row. Oh, come on, you and TJ and David all talking about like sharing plugins and like in that chat and like screwing around. Oh, are we using this one anymore? No, we're not using that one now. We're using this one instead. And oh my word.
Sure, but it's the same in Storm or in VS Code. Like you're
No.
still gonna go around and you're gonna ask, what plugins do I install?
Yeah, maybe that's true.
And
maybe that's true.
You know, I was theming, right? So I saw this carbon theme that Jeffrey was using in his Laravel 9 thing, and I thought, well, that's a nice piece of theme. And so it was a PHP Storm only theme. So I went and I found my old laptop, which had PHP Storm on it. And literally the only time that I've opened PHP Storm on that laptop was to fire up this theme so that I could then port it to Vim. So I've now got the Vim theme. But,
there you go.
Even the person that created that theme would have spent way more time coming up with the colors to put it all together. So I've just copy pasted and adjusted as needed. So, but it's very rare. Like I used the Nord theme from Arctic Ice Studio for probably 2 or 3 years. And then I stumbled upon this Aura theme, but I think it was just slightly too aggressive. Like it had some very high contrast colors in there. Like there was a really bright blue and a really bright orange, and they kind of just bumped up on each other. But this carbon theme, I think, will be my new Nord, and I'll be with it for a while. So
fair enough. I think I could maybe get there someday.
Maybe come back. Weren't you in Vim for a while?
No, I think I tried it, and it's just like that's the thing. I'm like I get into it a little bit, and like I'm not so bad with like the keyboard navigation and stuff. Like I'm fine with that. It's just all the setup. That's what it is. I use Vim all the time. Like
it's one-time setup. It's like I said. It's not really any different to Storm or VS Code. Like you're gonna spend that bit of time at the start to find all your plugins and get everything configured, and once it's done, like you never change it. I think for Vim, it's more the learning to use it. That's the bit. But once you learn the motions, like whether you're in, it doesn't matter what mode you're in. Once you learn the motions, it's all just switching numbers and letters around. Yeah.
Indeed.
Anyway, thanks.
Okay,
thanks
friends.
also to our friends at Honey Badger and
Indeed.
Relay.
Yes.
Dev
Thank you, Honey Badger friends,
for writing out another month with us on this wonderful podcast.
Absolutely. Okay, friends. Until next time, we'll see you.
See ya.